Okay, okay, nistuan no kaentki, given name Mark Graverock, Nitsukipitapmuk, or defined as raised for a time by grandparents Ernest Braverock and his sister, my great auntie Annie Wadsworth, along with Auntie Gladys Buckskin. I spent a period of time with them growing up, and it is probably one of my greatest influences that I did not realize until I would say I sobered up 11 years ago. So that is very important to me these days to understand the silent teachings, the examples that were given by these elderly people. And so I'm very fortunate and to have to be influenced by a lot of the older generation, and it's come back to me in the time of sobriety, and I'm very grateful for it. I'm very fortunate. I attended the St. Paul and St. Mary's Indian residential schools on the Blood Indian Reservation. I have been certified and accumulated alcohol and drug addictions training during more than 10 years work experience with various social agencies in Lethbridge. Sekohkutuki. Sekohkutuki is, as you know, is just the Blackfoot name for Lethbridge. I am currently working with the Lethbridge Shelter and Stabilization Program and the Sweetgrass Youth Alliance Initiative. I also lead Sage Clan Patrol in the streets of Lethbridge, where I am still realizing my greatest strengths and contributions to my people and community. It is now going on to 12 years of sobriety from addictions. Thank you. Okay, we're here for Sage Clan to basically what Sage Clan is, and I'll point it down to one thing I've got to say is I didn't know what I was doing. I just wanted to get something to eat, and there was an extra seat, and I got wound up in there and wound up talking with the police chief of police and another officer. Our chief of police was Mohawk, and the other officer was Cree, but they were with the Lethbridge Police Force. And we had a special guest from Winnipeg, from the Bear Clan Patrol, where we started from. We went prior to a year or so before we had visited Winnipeg, and I realized something there, something very important when I went down to see where slips my name, which she was pulled from the river in Winnipeg, and how the native population were being treated, and so a crisis was happening with how the native community. There's like 90,000 natives from primarily 6 different nations that make up Winnipeg. When I went down the river to see where Tina Fontaine was pulled from the river, just to say blessings, prayer, and because I work with street people, and I myself have been homeless for a lot of years in Calgary and in Lethbridge. And so when I went down there, I got a feeling of, I've been here before. It was strange, for somebody to sober up and to begin to start realizing, start waking up to these blessings that probably my grandfathers and grandmothers left for me to realize how important lived experiences. If you can define it, if you can capture your life, your answers are in your life. So I knew I was there. And then I went on to read the history of it. And I found out this place was a gathering place, a huge, I mean, you could probably imagine the powwow that happened there. Because on the etchings on some of the rocks there were Blackfoot etchings. They were there. Our people were there, the Blackfoot. Kainai, as whoever says it, Ganai. Anyways, so many other nations were there. You could see that was a gathering, a United Nations, way before the white man came. And there's where the term Turtle Island really probably originated from. So there was a big influence there to go home, not realizing this was going to happen. An emergency happened. Emergency happened where the opioid crisis had set in. About 8 years ago, 8 to 9 or something like around that time, the opioid crisis began in Lethbridge. And prior to that, his name, the producer is Dan Berdusco out of Lethbridge. Okay, I'll read it this here. At the onset of the drug crisis, a documentary by Dan Berdusco titled Where is Home? An exemplary honest definition and depiction amplifying the social issues and addictions of our mainly Blackfoot people in Lethbridge was completed. Another individual who was with me that Dan had hired was Marty Heavyhead Jr. and myself. I had, like I said, I was sober then and I knew the streets. And that's the reason why I got on Sage Clan. I was voluntold to do that. Anyways, at the end of this completion of the documentary, I started. I was worried about the few individuals that were starting their Bloods and Crips on the streets. And I knew this was real because I'm right there. I listen to the people on the streets. I hear what the women and the guys say on the streets, and I take them seriously. And you could see a little bit of gangs forming. At that time, the gangs couldn't form on a reserve because the Cowboys just beat them up, okay? They just get beaten up, so that was good. I really thank the Cowboys then. But anyways, in studying down in Pine Ridge, but they had gangs on the reserve. They had little gangs, Bloods and Crips literally too also. And they had a group called Wild Boys too. But anyways, I found out there was an opioid crisis there. And it had been there for more than 7 years. 9 years practically. And I was looking at how the crisis moves along. Next thing, I told Marty, you know what? This opioid crisis is going to be here in 2 years or less. It hit in less than 2 years. If you look at the Appalachian Mountains and how the prescription problems started in the Appalachian Mountains, those people there, the loss of economy and everything, and they turn to drugs, pills. You could look at our reserve, southern Alberta, it fit the same thing that happened there. You saw the double doctoring, they used to call it. They used to go from doctor to doctor and get their pills. So we were prime and ready for a drug addiction. It was built, it was gonna happen. So you could see why I said it's going to be here. You already seen trace of it, Seattle, all there was there. And it hit big time in Lethbridge. And so, in that time, from when I left Winnipeg, the crisis, a call to action when this lady came to visit from Winnipeg, a Bear Clan, and that's specifically why a Buffalo, I forget what they're called, Buffalo Trailblazers, a couple ladies who started, they brought her down. He was a founding member of Bear Clan. And so I was interested. I went to eat because there was free food. And I was surprised at the gathering there and the chief of police and this guy there. And he had a big announcement to make. And this guy never comes to any of our invitations, our get-togethers. All the native organizations in Lethbridge, he never does. All of a sudden he shows up. So what's he doing here? And I got to listen to all the organizations in Lethbridge, our own people, of what's going on in the streets, and I found how ignorant they were. Ignorant of what really goes on the streets. what really happens on the streets, what is going on amongst the people. Yohqua. We'll get to that, the definition of Yohqua. That was given to me by Peter Weaselhead. But anyways, we found out, I found out how ignorant everybody was, what was going on. I had to say something. I just couldn't. They didn't know what was going on in the streets. They didn't know what was going on. Really, they all just from hearsay and this, that, even the chief of police, even the police officer. So I had to say something. I just said something, and next day, after I said all my piece and everything, you know, I walked out of there, you know, set these guys straight. They don't know what's going on the street. They don't know what's going on with alcohol and drugs. And next day, it was in the news. The police and them, they didn't announce it. They were there. They tried to say, they just announced that, oh, we got something, you're gonna like it, you're gonna think. They spent that whole year from Winnipeg, because that police officer had come down with me to Winnipeg. And behind our backs, they formed the Bear Clan, but they called it the Watch. The Watch. If you looked at their uniforms, they were red and black, and they just looked like the Nazi youth in Hitler in Germany. They were starting to patrol it. After they started, we immediately, there's an emergency meeting because it was in the papers, the radio, TV, announcing the Watch and the special police force for Lethbridge. And Lethbridge already has a problem with the police. We already have a problem with the police at that time. They're doing better, I'll tell you now. I can't say that, you know, they've made good strides in correcting the bias and the prejudice that happened. However, emergency meeting that day, got invited to all the native emergency that day, and I didn't know I was a guest of honor, and they brought food. They knew I wanted food, and they told me to lead this group, Bear Clan, start a Bear Clan. So I did. That's where I started from. And all I had is lived experience. When I sobered up, I didn't know what to do. I was a heavy equipment operator. Other than that, I had done well in school and everything. I left high school with 6 scholarships. I had my choice of Santa Fe, New Mexico, and Antigonish, Nova Scotia, St. Francis Xavier University, and Institute of American Indian Art in the States. However, I didn't amount to nothing because everything that happened hit me at that time. You couldn't hold back what I had lived, what I experienced at St. Paul's. All my brothers and sisters were very athletic, very accomplished in what they did, what they pursued. They all accomplished it. My oldest brother was head and shoulders above a very well-known television personality in Lethbridge, who's on council now. My brother was in school with him, and he was well above him. All my brothers and sisters pretty well are gone from addictions. That bothers me because I am just fresh. Believe me, in 11 years, I have worked with these social agencies, but last year I finally went to treatment. I went up north. I go up north, way up north for my healing, to think things out. You know, I have to get away from those Blackfoot. You know. But anyways, I just kidding. Anyways, it was quite the turnaround. I didn't know why. I did not realize what I was doing with Sage Clan. What the hell am I doing? So we had meeting after meeting after meeting, and meeting after meeting with the police. They just joined in. They got all their native organizations to meet at police station. For about the 5th meeting, it just got ridiculous. You know, these guys are just talking. There's people out there. And so the ones that I got that we're going to walk out in the winter time were all ones who started, we just decided in that fifth meeting there, at the encouragement of one of our band counselors, and another one of the guys that I had hired, told to walk with us. So 6 of us just walked out halfway through the meeting, at the police station. These guys are just talking. This ain't gonna start till January, February, and people were already dying. So halfway through the meeting, I had already instructed the guys, halfway through the meeting, we're gonna do this to show them. I'm gonna tell them we're gonna start walking right now. You guys are just go ahead and figure out all the money and all your talk. So 6 of us just got up, we walked out, and I recall one of the patrollers, as we walked out of there, everybody was kind of clapping, One of them kind of says, keep talking, we're walking. I found that funny, just because of the police, just because of, you would say the BS you're hearing. But anyways, and of the individuals, this is who it really was Sage Clan. You see a picture here. We've grown quite a bit, and there's a big thing on reconciliation in Canada, right? We have a lot of white people with us. We really are an example of reconciliation, and we're the only thing spiritual. We don't really emphasize religion or anything because everybody comes from all different walks of life. Is we say a prayer in Blackfoot before we begin. That's the prayer there. What you see there, as before we walk off and feed the people on the streets and we clean up after them. But the most important thing is the connection that we have. That I will speak on that that's the end. That's probably the thing that I forgot just even. To go back to a little bit of Sage Clan. Anyways, I got voluntold to do it, so I did it without knowing what I was getting myself into, and it is a blessing in disguise for myself because it's kept me sober. It's kept me, for so hardcore as I was on the streets. I didn't get into drugs until went to Calgary and I got into cocaine and crack, mainly crack, but the sale of it, even the selling of it, even the working girls. I got involved with the working girls on the streets, even being a guard for them, a protector for the girls. In other words, kind of like an enforcer. I looked that big. I was a lot bigger then, but the cocaine took it out of me and it regained its size. But anyways, all the experience I've had, it was coming back to me. Everything was coming back, and so in leading this thing that we did not know, one thing I want to know is the evolution of it and things I don't question, such as the name Sage Clan. We were wondering, trying to get a name, and a friend of mine just at the college kind of says, "Sage, why don't you use sage? It's a healing. And it just hit, and I had heard so many, and Sage hit me. Yeah, that's right. On the bus ride, as soon as we drove away, his name is Sheldon Daycheap, a good friend of mine. So on the way there, one of the other patrollers, there's 3 of us who kind of, I'd say, founded Sage Clan. John Tallman and Tyler Chiefcat and myself. We're on the bus, and Sage, we'll just Sage me, and just blurt it out. Serve, assist, and Tyler had it, and guard, and then we couldn't figure out. We came up with engage. And then 2 days later, about 2-3 days later, the board. Now then we had a board. The police were there, university professors, people from City Hall were on our board. They asked us, you guys need a logo. You need a logo right away. We got to get this done. They were pushing us. This was after 2-3 months of patrolling already, and I told the guys, hey, we need a logo. We're at the mall, the 3 of us, and we need a logo. And I thought I Googled this Sage. I saw Sweetgrass, and there was a feather, and there was sage wrapped around it in a way. I said, what about this? And I just drew sage, just without thinking. And I'm an artist, but if it takes a long time for me to get going, and I do that. And then John, he's a real televangelist. He likes to listen to the televangelists. He's a hallelujah guy, and he likes that, eh? And he's good. He talks good, and I really respect for what he does. He said that number 3 was important. You get to incorporate 3 into that. And so let's use arrows, number 3. It didn't look right, so Tyler would cross them. So we crossed them. And we came up with, and we're looking at it, the 3 arrows crossed, they were pointing up, and then the sage, we're looking at this. What does that look like? And we looked, and he was showing them. Tyler said, that's an eagle. So we just outlined right around the outline, and we had our logo. It's that fast. In less than 10 minutes, we got that. The reason why I'm saying these little things, this is going to be small, but they're significant. As we've gone along Sage Clan, I don't question a lot of things. I don't question why it's meant to happen. And as we went along, we started being very successful. Even the first night, we went on patrol. The first night, about 3-hour patrol, and it was just after midnight. We were just finishing off at a local liquor store on the north side. We started driving away. We took off our vests. We had these reflector vests, ready to drive away. And let's just take one look in the back here. We didn't go to the back of it. We went to the back. And lo and behold, right out in the middle of the road, somebody was laid out. And we got there, wasn't breathing. There was another gentleman there just panicking. He was drunk, just panicking. And so the guys got on there. I could not have done this for me, for where I was at in my life. I did not have the confidence. I hadn't have anything. I didn't realize I had it in me. My life the answers for my life were not coming out yet, but yet there were people that helped me. When Sage Clan started, literally I didn't know who else to get. 2 guys literally came walking out of Gulf Gardens in Lethbridge, it's the Central Park there. They said, you want to walk with me. One was Eric Eaglechild. The other one's Clark Spotted Bull. I had went to residential school with them. And I grew up with them in Moses Lake, in Cardston. They just came, we're going to walk with you. Lo and behold, just to have 2 people that I grew up with that knew me, and they knew, and I couldn't bullshit, with these guys, they knew me. And to have them walk with me really gave me confidence. Even that is another blessing. All these little things that I say is why we were leading up to such words as like the logo and the way we formed. After that, I recalled a word kept coming to me, was Nichitapi Kimapi Sydney. And then I remembered where that came from. It came from my mom, who used to go out to the women's elders group, the elder women in standoff, and their motto or logo or whatever they put on was that word Nichitapi Kimapi Sydney. And that really hit home. So we adopted that word, Nichitapi Kimapi Sydney. Sage Clan was influenced to adopt this Blackfoot term and value that strongly referred to a necessity for real people ways to caring, sharing in kindness, understanding, and patience for survival or kamutan. When I say this, why I respect it, everything started coming back from things that I had learned, I've observed through my aunties. I had uncles and aunties that were in our societies. And I was never really a member, our family was never, but I always saw it, and I saw the Sundance. And early in life, Buster Yellow Kidney came to visit me and my grandmother, and I had a real bad skin condition that was just horrible to go to school. And my grandmother was suffering severely from arthritis. She couldn't even work, and my grandmother was a hard worker. She still worked, and you could tell the pain she was in. So the aunties apparently got Buster Yellow Kidney to come up and visit us, and he came to visit. And my grandmother told me, and Buster told me, later on you can talk about it. He told me about about what he'd been offered money to, speak at big conventions and things like that, and he told me these things. But however, what he gave us, the teas he gave us, and most of it worked for me. It just worked. Okay, it cleared up. And my grandmother was back at her ordinary hard-working self, because she had to take care of a lot of kids. She was, geez, so I don't doubt the strength. I can say this now, this story's now in time, the right place to share these sacred stories. They're real. So, needs to be these grandmothers. Why influenced me was my mother came home one day, and I came home one day, and my stepfather and my older brother were smoking outside the house. Next thing, I was wondering, what are these guys doing out here, standing outside? Never see that. And my stepfather says, "Don't go in there, Mom's mad. He kicked us out." I went in there, and I was wondering what's going on. He said, "There's no more smoking in the house." And this was like 15 years before the public started talking about no more public smoking. The grandmothers had already said, "You go home and you tell your families no more smoking in the house." This is how strong they knew, how influenced they are by our ways, our true values, our true ways. So needs to pick him up if it's really hit home. And still I didn't understand. I'll go on this here. Real people ways to caring, sharing, and kindness, understanding, and patience for survival or kamutan. This value we received in spirit from our Blackfoot grandmothers of Blood Reserve. The nature of this beautifully humble word encompasses all peoples of our sacred circle. In other words, everyone. Sage clan was given as a solution for Lethbridge. Why I say for Lethbridge? Where is that Blackfoot territory? It's not Calgary, it's not Regina, it's not Saskatoon where they have these problems. If they were to focus just on Lethbridge and the impact the Blood Reserve has within Lethbridge, they'd find solutions. Instead of bringing in a foreign agency like Alpha House they did, and starting up a safe consumption site that was just that was made on the site of what they used to call Cook County Saloon. They turned that into a safe consumption site where they had inhalation. They smoked besides injecting. You don't do that to a community that has so much addiction. All they did, and they claimed they saved how many people? All they did was teach our children how to inject, and especially how to inhale. They had a room where they all sit around in there and they smoke. I saw that in Hobima at a party with a dealer right in there. It's ridiculous. And then they come bring in, which I was really sketchy about. What's going on here? They brought in a ceremonial room. These guys are all whacked out. They're supposed to go out and say the prayers. It's not right. And this was an old saloon. So this is ridiculous of how much out of touch they were with what really goes on in Lethbridge. You have to study the demographic of what goes on. My 15 minutes coming up here, so I'm very passionate about this. You'll hear me. I mean, if I throw down my cap, don't mind. Okay. Ich, so patsimane. was a word that came up for, we were having our first really big gathering in Gull Gardens. It was given by Mary Ann Crow Healy. Some of the patrols started saying, you know what? This is how society is formed in our old ways. Another individual had already said that. Travis Splatted here. He was then a leader of our horns. And he said, I'm not bringing in the grandfathers, grandmothers are going to make you guys brothers and sisters. But it didn't happen. The police ruined that. And there's where I started being ostracized, because I stood up against the police, even City Hall. And so it didn't happen. However, Sapatsiman came at that same time. A number of people asked, and this word click, again this word click, this from all the different words. Sapatsiman is sweetgrass. As you all know, sweetgrass, Sapatsiman. It's kind of like Sapatsiman. What the beautiful thing about these Blackfoot words, we've incorporated these words in the way Sage Clan reflects it back to the people. So we saw, it came out an offering from the past. That's what came out of it. This is this solution, a healing, sweet grass from the past. Kindness, caring needs to be back in its glory, its true glory. Sage Clan Patrol had a purpose, and we continued on with our street patrols, not questioning the knowing of how and where we were being guided to. We persevered on despite opposition. We came to understand the manifestation of it as an offering in the past. Still out for understanding, prayer, and even debate. We're still growing. And in 2021, we also from one of the people on the streets, I'm not homeless and addicted, call me that, they're pretty ordinary on the street. They'll cuss you out, and they'll say anything, the worst things to you, even though you feed them. They'll come back next day, hours later, they still love you. But, and that hits on the patroller, say, we should give them another name. Find an Indian name, give them a different name. So we questioned, we told a few of the elders, Travis, and all this, that we're getting a name. The late Ed Heavy Shields gave me you'll find a name. Namupisiks was a term that was used in Lethbridge, Namupisiks. And way back in the day in Lethbridge, where you had to go into Lethbridge and you can't have a card. And there was a curfew. There was a curfew where past 9 o'clock you had to have a certain area you go and sleep. And it was just a flat area in Lethbridge. But most of them didn't go. They went down into the river bottom to sleep in the bushes down there. And that's where the term Namupisiks came from. Those people that went down there, that name came to. So there's a little bit of history Ed shared with me. And it's funny now that it's something ironic too, that where the site that the city had designated where the natives were supposed to go sleep, the Blackfoot go sleep, is the area where now the homeless shelter is, where we work. It was in that area. This day, that's where the homeless shelter has been built. But anyways, so we got the name Yuhqua from Peter Weaselhead. And Yuhqua, if you listen to it slow, Yuhqua. To wait for, kind of like you would say, you would come close to that when you can translate Yuhqua, to wait for. Well, that's what we understood, but Peter Weaselhead said the collective. Society can't move on if we don't help the poor. These homeless addicted are poor. They're the poor in spirit. They've been left behind so people can become rich. So people can move on. They're relegated they're expendable. Society can't move on, will not move on, will not succeed if you don't do your best. In 2022, our Blackfoot Language Symposium in Lethbridge, Yuhqua was suggested to Sage Clan Patrol by Elder Peter Weasel Moccasin to replace the terms of homeless and addicted when referring to our people on the streets. This term or name also referred to the community not healing or fully surviving if actions weren't made to help as many of Yuhqua as possible. It also, Yuhqua came to be and is in respect to the collective and also to the necessity to wait for, as this term is also translated. So, I guess we patrol like 3 times a week this now. Right now, we've again started our late night patrols, and we go right till 3 a.m. We catch the people in their environment, in their action, in the alley, in their time, and we're lucky that we catch them at a time when they want to quit, when they really, because for my own addiction, I know there was times I wanted right then and there to do something, and you take action. If there was somebody there that could have taken me out of it, I probably would have went back and drinking, but that's the part of it. It's a process. So, well, how much time do I? But anyways, long to cut this short here. We patrol about 3 hours at the most, 2 hours I'd say, the most, and we clean up debris, needles mainly. We feed, but the connection is the most important thing. That was the magic. That's the thing I did not anticipate. That is the thing I didn't even know what I didn't know what I was doing, but it started happening. We meeting them in their spot, in their place, and that's when they talk to us in their time of being on the streets, and that's real connection. That's where, again, I'm not liked because I like to change frontline approach. And a lot of people with lived experience, if they can capture their life, if they can straighten out their life, we as Blackfoot, as if we can capture how valuable your life is, despite everything else despite everything you have gone through, not to look down on it, even the worst experiences in your life can be your greatest lesson. Smallest thing you didn't realize may be your greatest lesson. It's defining that as a people, we have to do that. We must do that. Sage Clan has influence in almost 5 years. This year will be our 5 years anniversary. I can say we've influenced 23 individuals that have sobered up, and that's with a very limited budget, just with donations from the community, from both Guyana and people from Lethbridge. That's what we run on. We don't run on government or anything because they tell us what to do. They start questioning us, and how can I answer their questions when I don't know what I'm doing? It just keeps going. We just keep on. I don't question. Our ways, it's just so simple. It's a simple thing about caring for each other and pushing aside all the struggles we have as individuals. So the choice, I've touched on the connection being the most important thing, and I don't question it. It happens with each individual. It happens with, and they come to choice. They come to their own choice. Your consistency is always being there, seeing a familiar face, and it's brought out how important we are as a people, how our family system worked for us in the past. Not that nuclear family that the white man talks about. It's okay, it's all cool. Nothing, you can follow what you want. However, for us as a people, it's in our hearts, it's in our being. You know, I'm an uncle on the streets in Lethbridge, and I have about 200 nephews and nieces out there. You know, I'm family out there, and I take care of about 7 mom and dads, their daughters. I'm the go-between. And a lot of other patrollers do that too. And so it's important that, you know, that we come together and help one another so that's what Sage Clan is. I want to introduce Amy Cran. In the beginning at Sage Clan, right from the beginning, one of the first ideas we had was to have somebody walk with us, a university student. And so I told my their ears popped up. Everybody, what a great idea. Right away, when I came with, I invited somebody that I knew. I went to the meeting. The police had somebody there. They had a university student of their own. So, okay, two is good. 2 is better than nothing. But then that's when that commotion started. And I had to get rid of the police details. I fired the whole board. I got rid of all these guys. Look at an addict drunk firing a city hall guy, a police chief, and who the hell are you, you know? No, I fired them all. Man. But anyways, so we tried this, and it didn't work out. And we tried again with the college. Somebody from the college was going to do the same thing 2 years ago. And word got out how bad I was, you know, so I was a crazy horse or something. And lo and behold, prayer answered in the time that we needed. Amy Cran came forth, and she's been studying from the University of Lethbridge, and she's done her thesis on Sage Clan, and so she'll present what she's observed. Okay, I appreciate you all. Thank you.
Like Mark said, and thank you for that, my name is Amy Cran. I'm a settler scholar from Medicine Hat, but I've been living in Lethbridge for the past 4 years. Recently completed my BA in anthropology. And I'm not going to take up a ton of your time today, but I thought this is kind of an interesting opportunity because often in my discipline of anthropology, it's very common for anthropologists to go to other parts of the world and do their research and then present at conferences, but never actually share what they learned with the communities that they learned with, and certainly never to actually have people that they learned from be able to come with them and to kind of honor that knowledge and expertise. So this is kind of a new thing that we're trying out, and I think it's pretty cool. I'm very grateful that Mark was able to make it as well. And I'd like to start by kind of explaining why I started to study Sage Clan in the first place. I have some experience doing research on the supervised consumption site controversy in Lethbridge, also working as an outreach volunteer with another organization, and briefly as an addiction support worker with the previous operator of the Lethbridge shelter. And through all these experiences, I would often hear from clients mentions of Sage Clan. And I could tell in the way that they spoke about this organization, even though I didn't know a lot about them, that there was something different in what they were doing. There was a different kind of social proximity, and I would even characterize it as a different kind of love. And so that really interested me in the context of the opioid crisis that Alberta has been facing since about 2016, or at least that's when the government started to characterize it that way, particularly as these crises, which I see as really a converging crisis around opioid use, but also homelessness, like a housing crisis and a mental health crisis as well. I found it really interesting that Sage Clan was emerging as a Blackfoot-led organization, one that is really prioritizing lived experience in their approach, and particularly as many of these issues disproportionately impact First Nations people in Lethbridge. In Lethbridge, we have 6.6% of our population that identifies as First Nations, but 51% of those identified as unhoused in our recent point-in-time homeless count are First Nations. So really severe overrepresentation there. To give you a brief overview, my interest in Sage Clan was kind of two-pronged. I was curious about how they might be informed by Blackfoot epistemology, a fancy way of saying Blackfoot ways of knowing and being, and also how that approach might be different to or different from or similar to other approaches to addiction treatment in southern Alberta. So kind of broadly, harm reduction approaches and abstinence-oriented approaches. Oh, and I skipped. That's why I did it. Okay, I'm turned around. So one of the frameworks that I thought I might initially use to talk about Sage Clan and to learn about them is something that I've termed very broadly culture as treatment, which is why I was so excited to come today, because the topic of this week's conference is culture as medicine. And I want to preface this by saying my approach to this topic is very different, being that I am settler and also that I'm taking it from kind of an academic lens. And it's been talked about in a lot of different ways. Lots of this actually does come from Indigenous scholars. And really it begins with this notion that I think is not that surprising to many of us, or probably all of us, that colonization, there has been a lot of health issues that have arisen from that due to a rupture in the connection to culture, and that perhaps some of those health issues could be resolved by reconnecting with it. And that can mean a lot of different things. It could mean returning to embracing traditional teachings, spirituality, dance, food, traditional medicines, all of that good stuff. My methodology is very standard for anthropology. I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty, but just to give you an overview, I did something called participant observation, which is exactly what it sounds like. I was there observing, taking some notes, but also actually participating like any regular volunteer would, handing out food, speaking with the people that Sage Clan serves. As you can see, I was often having a ball out on patrol. It's not necessarily a somber event. There's actually a lot of teasing and joking that goes on that I'm going to get into in the next little bit here. But the first thing that I want to kind of tease out is the centrality of the act of actually patrolling on the street. This is talked about often in terms of how patrol occurs rain or shine, which I frequently learned the hard way, suffered many sunburns over the summer. And I want to argue that the centrality of the walk really breeds trust in the people that Sage Clan serves. Going out on a regular schedule, following a predictable path, people really, they know that Sage Clan is going to be there to support them, and they're really a reliable presence for folks in the downtown. But interestingly, I also see this working both ways. It's very much a reciprocal relationship. So the people Sage Clan serves have certain expectations placed before them, that they have to treat volunteers with respect, to not use when you're handing them food, to not curse, direct foul language to volunteers, to not reach into the wagon and just help yourself to food. And I want to suggest that that is actually really interesting because to me, it suggests that the people Sage Clan serves are really seen as autonomous adults who are capable of engaging in proper reciprocal relationships and capable of giving that respect back. And that is actually a really different way of seeing people who are experiencing homelessness and addiction compared to other agencies who have a more paternalistic approach. The walk itself also really suggests to me just how deeply grassroots Sage Clan is, which I'm sure you could kind of pull from what Mark was saying about, we're done talking, we're just going to go out and walk. Because really they do have that kind of fire to just go out and meet people where they most need help, be that alleyways, local parks, encampments. They're really able to kind of hit the crisis head on where people are needed. And just be very action-oriented in that. Now, I also want to go back to the title of this talk, where I suggest that healing, and specifically healing from addiction, is actually, I say, reframed through Nitsitapiki Bitsini. I eventually came to kind of understand this as Sage Clan's guiding principle, as it was explained to me by Mark and from my own experience of walking and from my own perspective. So as Mark said, he explained this as the real people caring for, sharing, looking out for one another as a way of life or as a society. And yes, I also wanted to touch briefly, as Mark did, on the word that was recently coined by Elder Peter Wieselmakasen, Yohkwa, the collective, or those who will not be left behind. And I see these as very tied together, because to me it suggests not only that Blackfoot people sense of responsibility to those that are in need, their community, but perhaps the broader Lethbridge community also shares this responsibility, First Nations and non-First Nations. I always like to be careful to say, even though there is this overrepresentation in Lethbridge of who these issues impact, addiction and homelessness are not First Nations issues. They impact people of all walks of life. And I think it's all of our responsibility to tackle that as a community. So you might be wondering what this kind of looks like in practice, at least from my perspective. The first big way I see Pitsini coming through is in humor. Like I said earlier, patrol is really not a somber event. You have a lot of teasing between volunteers, a lot of clients also getting the teasing, and that is something that kind of surprised me at first, but that people don't really shy away from. And I want to suggest that that's really important for kind of an obvious reason, but the patrollers and the people they serve are kin, and you joke with your friends and family, right? And to me, this really indicates that Yohkwa are being treated with dignity and respect, instead of what was often characterized to me as a kind of pitying or infantilizing form of empathy that is typical among some other service providers. Another really important way I see this caring or sharing coming out is through the very simple act of sharing food. One of the team leads, Keenan Wieselmakasen, often uses this phrase, "it's not just a sandwich." And that is really pointing to, on one hand, the fact that actually handing someone a meal provides an opportunity to connect, potentially talk to somebody about their interest in detox, those sorts of things. But I also think it's really significant in terms of Blackfoot teachings, from what I understand, at least around the importance of sharing food, and particularly not refusing food when it's offered to you. And lastly, one of the biggest themes that I found in working with Sage Clan was really viewing the organization in and of itself as a family. It's a very common reason that people will join Sage Clan in order to connect with their family that's on the street as a way to check in on them. But people often also characterize the act of attending patrol, despite what they're going through at the time, as healing in and of itself, because they're able to connect so closely with the volunteers that they also consider to be family. And this is kind of ideas coming from Betty Bastien, who talks really interestingly about relationships being a site of knowledge production and also of healing, which I think is very significant. So I ended up kind of problematizing culture as treatment as I was introduced to the concept of Pitsini, or I guess I should say perhaps the Western academic interpretation of culture as treatment. Because to me, this was just such a kind of incredible, holistic perspective on Blackfoot culture, and it felt kind of a disservice to try to pigeonhole it within the culture as treatment paradigm, particularly because a lot of the literature that I was accessing would be written about treatment facilities, and culture as treatment was really presented as certain programming that would be available. And to me, I see Pitsini coming through so deeply in such an embodied way in everything that Sage Clan does. So not to say that I at all disagree with the premise of this, but just that I think more needs to be done to theorize from more of a First Nations perspective instead of a Western one, to really capture the depth of the significance of what this means. And just to wrap up very quickly here, I do want to touch a little bit on reconciliation, because this ended up being a very unexpected theme that emerged over the course of my research. And I think I'll start with the story of a team lead, Josh Cummins. He often shares a moment he had on patrol with another team lead, Jasmine, where they kind of looked out 20 feet in front of them at all the different people that were out walking. And as Mark touched on, and you see in the images, there's people of all different races, religions, backgrounds, ages that come out on Sage Clan patrols. And he kind of noticed this for the first time and thought, this is what reconciliation means. This is reconciliation in action. And that is very significant in what the organization is doing. But importantly, it points to the fact that reconciliation is about action. It's not merely symbolic. I had a lot of conversations with volunteers about their perspective that people, or I should say non-Indigenous people, are increasingly comfortable putting on an orange t-shirt, saying every child matters, but then that same person might walk by a person experiencing homelessness in disgust and not really recognize the fact that that person very likely was a child that went to residential school or was impacted intergenerationally. So for Sage Clan, it's really important that reconciliation moves away from the stage of still learning and towards action, which is really embodied in how they got started and the act of just getting out on the street, having boots on the ground itself. And the last thing I want to end on is actually kind of stealing directly from Mark. He often talks about Lethbridge as being very solvable because we have a very small population compared to bigger centers, and because we do have a lot of existing supports like Sage Clan and folks who really know our community who's on the street. And it's because of that it's the hope of Sage Clan that with more investment from the entire Lethbridge community, not just First Nations residents, that we might be able to make some really positive steps forward in terms of reconciliation, actually getting out the help that people need to them. And that would amount to a serious adoption of reconciliation and an acceptance, as Mark said, of Sage Clan as an offering from the past, really recognizing and appreciating its Blackfoot origins. And that is all that I have for you.